noise. So talking or asking questions, if you wouldn't mind muting yourselves, that would be really helpful as well, just to make sure that everybody can hear what we're sharing today. Okay, so we'll start kind of with today's session. So it's about an hour, guys. We're going to be just like going through three objectives, really. So we'll share the proposals for the session today and we'll get going. Okay, so hopefully everybody should be able to see the kind of three areas that we're looking at today in this session. If you've got any issues with kind of seeing anything, then please obviously just use that chat facility and just type it in there. So what we're looking at today is where I'm hopefully going to give you a little bit more of an understanding about what this blended learning looks like at Elms Bank, because obviously we've returned to school in September, but it's looking slightly different to normal pre-COVID. So I kind of wanted for you to understand what that looks like at school at the moment and how we're supporting your children, our staff and you as families to kind of navigate our way through that. Then I'm going to pass on to Kate. So Kate's going to show you the learning platform that we're using at school and what your children are using at school. So she's going to run through Teams with you and just some basic functions. And then Rebecca's going to finish off by just going through some ways in which you can support your child to stay safe online, and also go through ways in which we've ensured that your child's safe online using our learning platform. So that's the kind of premise of what today's going to be a little bit about. So without further ado, I'll get us going on what does the blended learning look like at Elms Bank. Okay. So obviously we are all fully aware that there was partial closure of school during summer 2019, and at that time we did have some students accessing education within school. They were predominantly key workers and vulnerable students, and that was decided along with the senior leadership team and the safeguarding lead. Other students were also accessing formal education, but they were doing it remotely and via kind of physical work packs. So when we returned to school in September, obviously the idea was that we were all returning to formal education, and we have a duty to ensure that your child has full access to formal education, whether that's in the event of a closure, a bubble closure, if we're in or out of school. The government talk about a continuous educational support for your child. And we've worked tirelessly at Elms Bank in order to make sure that that is what we offer your child. What we ensure is that it's a differentiated learning approach, and what I mean by that is the learning that your child is currently accessing is meeting their academic needs. So we're not just doing a one-size-fits-all, we're really tailoring it to those students that are accessing exams at the moment, or those students that are potentially maybe in year 10, that are kind of starting to learn about exams. We really are tailoring the educational support, and also that wellbeing development of our students as well. So we're not obviously not forgetting the fact that they might need that, well, they are needing a little bit more support with the wellbeing as well as their curriculum content as well. So just so that you're fully aware of what we offer. So if we close the school, so in the event of a school closure, in the event of a pod closure or a class closure, this is what we envisage to ensure happens, okay? So we promised you guys that there will be effective communication between home and school. Now, this is predominantly via the form teacher and the pastoral team for you guys, but we promise that our communication with you will be transparent. All students will have access to a differentiated workbook, and this is an offer of full curriculum content. And as I mentioned, depending whether your child's in year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, so on, they will have a differentiated work pack that you can opt in or out for, that will really support that curriculum for them at home. Furthermore, your child will have access to online lessons. So they all will have a timetable where they'll be able to access those online lessons. They also have accessibility to something called social time. So what we've taken into account from some parents that have mentioned it is that they're really worried that their child is missing out on that social time and that opportunity to just chat with their friends with a cup of tea. So what the pastoral team has done is they've set up social time virtual sessions where friends have been coming together. It is staffed, so there will be either a teacher there or a teaching assistant there, but it's just an opportunity to almost have a catch-up like we would be doing in school. We also have the online assembly, so that's running on a Friday afternoon. I know that quite a lot of parents have been getting involved in the social media challenges on Twitter. The Twitter feed is really taken off following the summer term. We will ensure that there is a differentiated package of support. And what we work towards is we really want to ensure that actually we are led by you guys. We know we have a responsibility to ensure that there is continuous education for your child. However, we also don't want to pressurise you and think that you know, it's a lot to be dealing with. It's all kind of trying to cope with. So we're not under any illusions that we're going to pressurise you to accessing all the lessons, but what we want you to do is we want you to lead us in that. The last thing is we do offer support in terms of technology. So I know that some families have had accessibility to laptops, accessibility to dongles, but internet access, so we're able to support in that as well. Okay, so I just wanted to take you through really the protocol for what happens and how we've got the how we kind of got it in our head about how it would run following the. Sorry, I think that there's someone on mute at the moment. I know that people might have come in a little bit late, so welcome. But could I just ask everyone? Okay, don't worry. I think sorry, there we go. Sorry guys, it's just there's a really bad backlog in the background. Thank you for that. So once for the day one closure, obviously you will be informed by our admin team via text message, phone call, and potentially. So once you're informed of that, really at Elms Bank, our blended learning protocol kind of kicks in. And the day one, I mentioned to you about supporting wellbeing and supporting kind of pastoral side of it. That day one will have very much of a pastoral support focused day. And for you guys, that day one looks like this. So the form teacher will ring each family and they will ask you questions. And those questions may be, do you have access to the internet? Do you have access to a laptop? Do you want your child to access online lessons? Or do you want them to access kind of a physical work pack? So all those questions will be asked to you via your form teacher. Furthermore, form staff will also share with you the online virtual lesson timetable again, just in case that's one avenue that you want to go down. Now, it's very much not an either or. I said to you, it's a complement of kind of learning opportunities. So you could have the workbook, but you could also have the virtual lessons. It's not an either or. So you really decide that yourself. Okay. Along with this, obviously, I know that a lot of you have been in contact with Tim and Mrs. Bland, the pastoral lead, and also some of you have spoken to Andy Cairns, our ICT technician. So these people will all be working tirelessly to make sure that your child has access to Microsoft Teams, and if there's any general computer technology queries, they are your kind of lines of inquiry if you're not able to contact your form teacher. Okay. So I've mentioned about that you can opt into both, and obviously if students do have access to technology, they will be invited to participate in a virtual form time session. So that day one is really about what do you need, what do we need to get to you, and how do we move forward then with day two and so on. So day two onwards, so what to expect. So from that day two, obviously we're hoping that we then have got information in terms of what you guys want. Do you need a laptop? Do you need a workbook? So we proposed that on day two, that is when this blended learning timetable really kicks in. And teachers will have had their blended learning timetables, so they will be ready to go in terms of teaching your child their designated curriculum area. As well, each timetable also has this wellbeing time identified. So this is an opportunity for your child to access a virtual form time, and that is organised for 9 o'clock every morning. This is led by the form teacher, and it might be, it's low-key pastoral type activities. So it might be a shared class read, it might be a game of bingo, it might be news for the day and a bit of a show and tell. And that time really is to kind of support our 5 steps to well-being. So our keep learning, give, take notice, be active and connect, and also to kind of bring obviously all the forms together. So touch on this in a little while after I've finished. So virtual lessons are being taught through a platform called Teams, which is run by Microsoft. And all students have access to 2 lessons most days. Okay, so that is 2 curriculum lessons plus their wellbeing time. So there's opportunity for 3 face-to-face interactions. As well, they also have their opportunity to do their workbook if that's something that you've decided to opt into as well. So in terms of what the students are working on, Key Stage 4 lessons, so that's any students that's in year 10 or year 11, they are continuing to work towards their accreditation. And that's in light of the fact that obviously as schools at the moment, the government has informed us that summer examinations and planned assessments for 2021 are still going ahead. So we're doing all we can to make sure that those students have the foundations and the best possible chances of ensuring that those qualifications and the work content that they need is completed for this summer term. Anybody that's in year 7, 8 and 9, so that's Key Stage 3 students, they are following their usual curriculum, perhaps with a couple of tweaks, because obviously working remotely is a little bit different to working in school, but they are following their usual curriculum, and that's developing their mastery. And what I mean by that is for them to focus on skills that perhaps they've forgotten, because obviously it was quite unsettled in the summer term. So it's about them kind of being masters and developing strategies that perhaps they've forgotten in the past. As well, by day 2, Twitter will be up and running, as well as our Instagram account. So if you've not had a look at Instagram or Twitter feed, I'd urge you to go and check it out now, because teachers and teaching assistants will be posting content on there to further support the curriculum and well-being of your child. As well, there's been a slight adaptation from the first time we went into lockdown, but the arts are currently running an art challenge day. So on this day, your child will be invited to attend a face-to-face session with the art teacher, and they will then model what the expectations are for that day. So I know that this week their focus is on food. So that might be a drama workshop or an art workshop or a music workshop. And then they will be given a challenge for that day based on that interaction in the morning. Okay? So I'm going to pass over now, guys, to Kate. I don't know if you want to ask any questions now before we pass on to Kate, or if we haven't got any questions, then we can just carry on and move over to Kate, and then we can save the questions to the end. So I don't know if you want to unmute yourself or use the chat facility, or we're okay to move on.
Will we okay to move on?
Super, thanks, Kate.
No problem. Okay, I'm going to move between PowerPoint and something else, so apologies if the slide isn't as big. I'll start from here. So I only started at Elmsbank in September, and my role is lead of technology, but I am a computing and IT specialist. And we have made the move from Zoom to Teams. Obviously, I know a lot of the learners have got used to using Zoom over the summer, but that was mainly down to security issues. And if you speak to many schools have moved in the direction of Teams. Now, as it was said before, Teams is run by Microsoft. It is a learning management system that gives us lots of different features, not just the meeting features that we're currently using at the moment. And as a school, we're starting to explore how we can use all the different features of Teams to benefit the students at Elmsbank. And obviously, it hasn't been ideal this first half term since September. We've been in and out quite a bit. And while we obviously can't keep students in the building, it is a very powerful tool, Teams, to keep all the teachers, the students and the parents connected together. We have sent out various resources of how to access Teams. I'm just going to go through another one with you, and I'll obviously share this afterwards, but if you have got any questions or you're unsure, please ask. So there are two versions of Teams you can have. You can have the desktop app, which you can download if you've got a Windows machine, or you can download Teams if you've got an iPad or something like that. Or the most common way to access it is via the Office website that you can see now on the screen. The learner would need to type in their email address. They have been shared, but if you are unsure at any time, just get in touch and we can obviously let you know what that is. And then you would sign in. When you click sign in, it would ask for your password and you would type your password in. And again, these have been shared, but if you are unsure, please ask. From there, it will bring up the main screen with what's called the apps toolbar down the left-hand side. And you're looking for the Teams icon, which I'm hoping is starting to become familiar to people now, which is two little people that are purple with a T. You would click on that icon and it will take you to Teams. Now, Teams will change and look different depending on what access we give to students, which I'll talk about in a second. But in the Teams bit here, all their classes will appear. So for example, I've done a Year 8 maths class here. Whichever class they are accessing a lesson on, they would click on that lesson. So I'm going to click because I wanted to access a Year 8 maths lesson. Whenever a teacher sets a lesson, they will appear telling them that a meeting has been scheduled and it'll tell them the day and time of the meeting. At this point, they can't do much more until their teacher starts the meeting. When their teacher starts a meeting, a purple box will appear to say that the meeting is now taking place, and they will literally click the join button. That brings them to the screen very similar to what you've just been on when you've logged in. It will have either their picture here if they've got their camera on, so obviously you can see the camera's off on this one, and their mic's currently off, or it will have their initials. They will decide what they want to do, and then they will click obviously the join now button. We have put in place a lobby, which means that the students can't access the meeting without the teacher having started. Very similar to what you experienced today, where it said, we'll let you in shortly. Once they've been let in, they will then get the screen very similar to what you've got now, with the little toolbar at the bottom that tells them how long the meeting's lasting or been on, their camera to switch on or off, their microphone to switch on or off. This is the share button, which I've used today. They can put their hand up to let the teacher know if they've got a question. We've then got the chat, and then this one here allows them to see who else is in the meeting. And then the final one at the end is obviously to put the phone down to end the meeting. So that's very simply how to access their Teams lessons. And as I said, I will share it so you can go through it. There has been a little bit of confusion regarding accessing Teams lessons. So when we first started, we did have email set up and learners were accessing their lessons via an email that was sent by the teacher. For safeguarding purposes, we have had to shut down some features. So we have turned off their email inboxes, which means they don't have access to what's called their Outlook account. We then directed learners to access their lessons through the calendar, but the calendar is linked to Outlook. So by taking away their emails, it is also taking away the calendar. So therefore, the way that I've just shown you is the way that they will need to access lessons. They won't be sent an email because they'll have nowhere to access one. They won't have a calendar to look at. The other thing we've done is we are stripping back the instant chat so that students are only having the ability to access this during lessons when a member of staff is present. And students will be able to reply to a chat to a teacher if they need to have a conversation. But we have tried to trim it down to not allow, obviously for safeguarding purposes, conversations happening without an adult present. From there, I just wanted to show you some other tools on Teams. Now, this is obviously the very basic start. Some people might have heard of something called Immersive Reader. Obviously, a number of our learners will have certain needs that they might struggle to read the information that's there, might need it put in another way. So as I was showing before on the screen where we were clicking on a lesson, if a member of staff puts on a comment, if they click on the 3 little dots that are by that comment, it will then bring up a set of options and they can click on this one that's called Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader is also available in Microsoft Word. What this does is it brings up the text separately. They can click this button here and it will read the text to them. So if we're going to need help to understand what's being said, we can press this button. It will talk through it for us. The other thing they can do is click up here to change their text preferences. This brings up some options such as changing the size of the text. It also allows you to put space in between the text to make it bigger and change the font. It also gives you the opportunity to change what's called the theme, which is basically the contrast on the screen. So obviously if they struggle with the black text on the white background, we can change it to the options that are there. The other option we've got is called grammar options at the top. And again, this allows you to change the text so we can split it into the syllables and it separates the words out for people to read. We are also able to highlight different parts of the text and it will turn them to a certain colour. So for example, the nouns here have changed to a purple pink colour and we can switch them on and off as we need to. And then in the reading preferences one at the end, we can turn on what's called line focus, which will just show us the certain line of text if there's quite a bit of text. And again, they can press the play button and it will talk through the text for them on the screen. We can also, on the reading preferences, click on words and it gives the chance, if you press the little hearing icon here, to repeat that word if they're unsure of how to pronounce a word or what a word is. And then the other thing we can do is click on words and using Board Maker, it will put the symbols under some of the words if it does have the Board Maker symbol for that word, which obviously will allow the learners to be a little bit more independent and work out for themselves what some of the information might be. At any point, there is a back arrow at the top that you would press, and that will take you back to the main Teams page that we saw before, where they would access meetings or see any information. The final bit from me is obviously this is new to everybody, which is absolutely fine. But if at any point you have any trouble accessing Teams whatsoever or getting onto lessons, obviously feel free to email Andy Carnes, as Nick mentioned before, who looks after the IT at school, but also my email address is there as well. If you do contact form tutors, it does tend to get emailed through to me or Andy, so that's not a problem. But other than that, I will share those little how-to guides for you later so that you can have a go for yourself.
Thanks, Kate.
No problem.
Again, as before, so we can either ask the questions now if we've got any kind of questions, or we can save them up till the end. And if not, we can move on to Rebecca. So we've got one question, Kate, off Matthew Schwimmer's mum. She's asked, will that be sent by email?
Yes, I can send it to you by email. That's not a problem. And I'll put the 2 links in there as well for those 2 tutorials.
So what we're going to do as well, guys, is obviously I mentioned at the start we've recorded the session today. So we're going to actually put this session and we'll link it onto the Twitter account as well. So we'll upload it to YouTube and then we'll save it onto the Twitter account. I think Miss Langley Sadler as well has joined us this morning as well. I think she might have come in.
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry I was delayed. I was interviewing, but it's lovely to see so many of you accessing this first input on using Teams, and I know obviously Kate described some of the changes that we've had to make, but as a school we're getting used to it, as parents you're getting used to it, so hopefully together we can continue learning. So thanks so much for your input, Kate and Nick, and I know Rebecca's going to input in a minute.
Okay, so I think we'll move on to Rebecca now, is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to outline some of the things as a school that we've put in place to ensure safety online for the lessons, and then some things that as parents, because we know that online can be an absolute minefield and things are changing all the time, some things that might be helpful for you as parents to increase safety online. And we recognise as well that in terms of the local lockdowns as well as pod closures, that children are spending an increasing amount of time online, so some of these things will hopefully be useful for you. So in terms of staying safe online, we've got a range of safeguarding measures that we have put into place. So there's a blended learning policy, and that sort of covers the things that Nick outlined in terms of what will happen from day one in terms of that pastoral input and how those sort of lessons will be shared with you. As sort of outlined by Kate, we've put the restrictions on features for students and the sort of some more detailed input about that on the blended learning policy for the things that students can't access but staff would have control of. We've got a code of conduct for staff and one for students, which will be sort of supported by parents, we hope, and I'll go through that with you in a moment. And then we've got our usual policies that apply. So in terms of being in pod closures or a local lockdown, our safeguarding and child protection policies absolutely still do apply. And we've got a COVID addendum to that. And we also still have our behaviour for learning policy and our ICT acceptable use policy, and all of those still apply. Could I have the next slide, please, Kate? So I just wanted you to see this in terms of the code of conduct for staff. So this is the things that as parents and families you can expect from our staff. So things like communicating in groups and one-to-one sessions, ensuring that the lessons are suitably planned and matching the needs of the learner. So that was the differentiation that Nick talked about. Ensuring that lessons are available at the correct time, as per sort of the remote learning timetable. You should expect that our staff are wearing suitable clothing. So obviously we're still in a profession, so whether we're working at home or in school, we need to sort of be presenting ourselves professionally. In terms of for staff, we're asking that they are sitting in public areas of their home. So at the moment I'm sat in my kitchen. And that they're not sat in bedrooms whilst they're teaching online, and also that in terms of the background in their home, that they're not giving anything away in terms of personal information or anything that might identify where they live. Obviously, we would hope that staff are using appropriate language, and that includes other people who might be around in the household, because you'll understand that some of our families and their partners might be working from home as well. We want to maintain the standards of professional behaviour and conduct that you would absolutely expect to see in school, and staff are aware of that in terms of what's outlined in our staff handbook. We won't be recording, sharing or distributing video material without permission. So if we're going to do that, we will be seeking your consent to do so. Staff obviously need to be aware that they remain visible when they're online. And then any tabs that they've got open, that they're appropriate if they're going to be sharing their screen. So we wouldn't want them to have things like personal social media accounts available, anything that wouldn't be like staff emails and things like that, that wouldn't be appropriate for our young people to see. Okay, can I have next slide, please, Kate? So in terms of our expectations for students, this is what we hope our students sort of will follow, and obviously that we would hope that that will be supported by parents. So that's following the school behaviour policy during online lessons and including appropriate use of language. So in terms of our merit system and sort of behaviour point system, that will still apply during the blended learning. We would hope that students would use the Teams functions appropriately, so using the chat box to ask questions and responding to the teacher, and avoid having personal conversations and things like that. We want to ensure that our learners are dressed appropriately and ready to learn. So we don't expect anybody to be sat at home in their school uniform, but just that they're dressed appropriately sort of to be online. So not wearing pajamas and things like that. For our students, we would hope that if they can, they'd be situated in a public place in their home. But we understand that because of really busy households and sort of lives, it's not possible for everybody to sort of be working in the kitchen or the living room. So if your child is online in their bedroom for their lesson, just make sure that they're sort of not in bed, that they're sat up and they're ready to learn. We would want you to have an adult at home when your child is online and learning, just so that we know that they've got supervision and support should they need it, that they would ask for help if they need it. In terms of attendance, letting teachers know if they are unable to attend a planned session. So that might be something that as parents you do, just make contact with a form tutor to let them know that you won't be able to attend the session. And then in terms of participation, actively participate in sessions as independently as possible, understanding that it's okay to get things wrong. That's part of learning. So what we mean by that is just the same kind of participation that we'd have in class. And we don't expect sort of parents to have to sit by and sort of give prompts and things like that. It's absolutely okay for children to get things wrong and make mistakes, because that's how we all sort of learn and move forward. Okay, next slide, please, Kate. So in terms of keeping children safe online, we do sort of cover this in PSHE at school and under the new sort of relationships and sex education guidance that's come out for this school year. But we recognise that sort of during lockdown, children are spending more time online, and that for children with additional needs and children with special educational needs and disabilities, there's an increased level of vulnerability online. And sort of recent evidence is showing that children who are sort of vulnerable in real life are more likely to experience some risks online. So from sort of some of the recent evidence, and I don't want to share this with you to kind of scare you, but I just wanted you to kind of be aware of some of the things that are going on online and that you as parents you would probably want to be aware of. So some of the sort of vulnerabilities that they've highlighted is that children with additional needs are more likely to believe what they're told online, and whether that's from a friend or a stranger. They might be more sort of trusting and have a greater belief in what they see and hear. So believing that everything that they see is like true online and that people can be trusted. More likely to send explicit photos because they're tricked into believing that that's sort of a loving or safe relationship, and that is something that happens, and absolutely, you know, we would want to support yourself and your child if that happened. Children with additional needs are less able to think critically about what they share online and the consequences. So it's very easy to kind of quickly get drawn into a situation and for that to snowball. And less able to kind of recognise those risky situations, and less discriminating of sort of their own behaviour and what the behaviour that they see of others online. And again, sort of understanding that the sort of wider consequences of that and how things can kind of quickly escalate. So can I have the next slide, please? So we recognise that for children with additional needs, can experience a real kind of social isolation, and being online can absolutely be a lifeline in terms of learning new skills, being creative, building things, drawing things, meeting people, connecting with friends and family. So it's absolutely something that we want our young people to be able to enjoy and participate like everybody else. So some of the things that as parents you might want to be aware of are some of the things that you can do to help. So one of the things that I would say is to just have a regular conversation about online safety and about the things that your children are doing online. And it doesn't need to sort of be something really formal that you do, but just sort of built into everyday life in terms of like in the same way that you'd have discussions about stranger danger or bullying or making healthy choices, friendships. Just kind of have chats about things like that. And I've put some kind of conversation starters on the next upcoming slides, but just that it's something that is kind of normal in your household and everybody talks about it, so that then if something does go wrong, children feel like it's okay to talk about it. Okay, can I have the next slide, please, Kate? So in terms of conversation starters, this is some of that have come from Internet Matters. So they're suggesting asking children about the sites that they like to visit and what they enjoy doing online. And I was thinking about this in terms of if your child was going out of the house and someone was coming to collect them, you'd want to know who they were spending time with and what they were doing. And I suppose it's about applying those same principles to internet use in terms of knowing what your child's doing and sort of what the presence is online. Asking them about how they stay safe online. So asking your child about how they know if something's safe online, what kind of things they would do to check if something was safe, and what might be okay to share and not okay. So is it okay to have a profile picture? Is it okay to share where you live? Is a friend someone that you know in person from school, or is it someone that you've met online? And just having those conversations to kind of get a gist of where you feel that they're up to. Asking them if they know where to go for help if something goes wrong online, and all of the apps that your children will use and you and that sort of they will use and you would use as an adult, all have protocols in terms of how you can report content and block. And I've put a link in here, so when you get this slide later, you can have a look at a different, an online page that kind of guides you in sort of different organisations that can help if something goes wrong online. And then just finally to think about how you use the internet as a family, so that it's sort of not something that children go off and do on their own. Is it something that you can build into as a family? So if you've got a pet, researching like pet care, or if you're baking something, can you look together for a recipe online, and just something that children get used to sharing with you, and it's not something that's kind of hidden away on the phone that they couldn't possibly share with parents, as I know some young people feel like that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So in terms of resources, there's been lots of resources out there online which are useful, but lots of them are kind of divided up into primary age and secondary age, which aren't always useful for children with additional needs, because they don't kind of meet all of their learning and sensory needs. So finally, Internet Matters and FGL, I think they're called, have come up with the Inclusive Digital Safety Hub. So I'm hoping that we can play this video as a bit of an introduction to them. It's a really new resource. It's just come out in the last 2 weeks. But if we can play that, please, Kate.
Inclusive digital safety. As our children's digital worlds continues to change, it's important for all children and young people to have the support they need to adapt and thrive in it. A growing part of their world lived online, socializing with friends.
Okay, sorry, I think it's quite quiet. I don't know if everybody else is getting the same.
Yeah, is there a possibility to turn it up?
While the internet offers great benefits,
I've turned it up a little bit. Does that help?
No, it's still really quiet.
It might just be the network.
Yeah, don't worry. If we just pause that there, Kate.
Yeah, no problem. We'll send it out.
Yeah, if we just pause that there and go on to the next slide. So if you go onto the if you go onto Google and you search for Inclusive Digital Hub, it will come up with the web page, and basically it's broken up into resources for parents and carers, resources for young people themselves, and resources for professionals. But it's almost like what we've been waiting for a really long time. There's handy step-by-step guides on there in terms of parental controls and things that you can do to keep yourself safe. And I know that there's loads of apps out there for young people that I wouldn't know how to navigate, but this web page literally has these step-by-step guides where you can download them. So it would have like one for WhatsApp, one for Instagram, and you can it will help you control what you want them to see and who can connect with them. But additionally to that, it has things like if you've got an Android device, if you've got an Apple device, it will help you set the correct settings. And then it goes down to even things like broadband providers. So if you've got like Virgin or Sky or BT and services like that, it will show you a guide on how to go on and set those parental controls so that you can kind of limit the things that are reaching the devices rather than controlling that within the app. There's lots of resources on there to upskill parents and children with additional needs in managing online safety. So some of the things that I talked about before, like would you know how to block and report inappropriate content, it literally kind of walks you through all that. There's lots of expert tips on gaming safety, and gaming can be sort of look completely different. There's all these different apps, and then there's those games where you wear the headset and they've got chat functions and you can speak to people, which I feel like that's an absolute minefield. So there's lots of information on there which I think will really benefit a lot of you. There's examples of the family internet use agreements, which I think are really, really good to engage young people. So this kind of set out the times that you might use the internet in the day and what you might use it for. But there's also things on there for parents as well, so that you know, we're mindful as a parent that we're not walking around on our phone all the time, and we're kind of practicing what we preach, and we're sharing that as like a family agreement. And I think that would be really helpful in supporting young people to buy into reducing the amount of time that they spend online. And then there's lots of guidance on where to get support if something has gone wrong online. And obviously, like as a school, we can be your first port of call in terms of that. You can come to us with any concerns, and we'll always try and help you navigate who's the most appropriate service to help you. You know, if it's something that you want removing online, something that you're not happy about, if there's been an incident of bullying or something that you feel is a criminal activity, we'll absolutely do everything that we can to support you in addressing that. Next slide, please, Kate. And then this is just the final slide. Kate, if you just bring these up on the screen, sort of one by one. These are just some sort of visual examples of some of the things that I talked about before. So this one's just an activity that the top left one is an activity that you could do with your child around understanding what a friend is. So would a friend do this? How would you describe a friend? How would you know the difference between a friend and a stranger? Is that a healthy friendship? That's an example of sort of the guide to keeping children safe on WhatsApp. Could I have the next one, Kate, please? Yep. This one is like a bit of a table activity. So is it okay to, and there's different examples here. So is it okay to use social media apps if I'm not the correct age, to share photos with people? The next one, Kate, please. And then this one is like, what would you do if, and it gives different scenarios, and they're just opportunities to have like a talking point at home about internet safety. But all of those are available on that inclusive digital resource centre that I told you about. So I would absolutely recommend that you go and have a look at that. I think that's it from me today. If we just click on to next slide, Kate. Thank you for coming today. And if you've got anything in terms of online safety resources or signposting, you're more than welcome to ask now or to contact us afterwards. And then, as sort of Kate said before, you can contact her and Andy around any online access issues, and Nick is your go-to person in terms of the blended learning protocols and what you can expect. But if you've got any questions now, please feel free to unmute yourselves or pop something in the chat, and we'll sort of spend a bit of time going through those if anyone's got any queries. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just give it a couple more minutes, guys. So obviously, if you have got a question, just like we've said, you can either chat facility or if you want to unmute yourself.
So I just wanted to ask, I just wanted to double check. The children, they're all going back at the beginning of November, aren't they, after half term?
Yes, so the Inspiring Explore students, so obviously Matthew
Yes.
will be due back on the 2nd of November.
Fine. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to double check. That was all. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Oh God. Oh no. Oh no. What? Oh.
Has anybody else got any other questions?
Hi, I'm Samuel's mum.
Hello.
I've noticed when Samuel's been on some of his meetings that some teachers have muted the children because they're talking over it, but they're still managing to get past that muted button. I just wonder how that works, how the children have managed to do that.
Kate, can you answer that one?
Yeah, obviously they've all got rights at the bottom of the screen, like you can see now, where you can switch your camera on and off, you can mute on and off. A teacher can, in the settings, if they want, mute people, but they will have the option to unmute themselves.
Right. Okay.
The only thing they could do is mute them, but then they wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to unmute at any time then.
Right.
Which
Okay.
means they couldn't be interactive in the lesson.
Okay. I just wondered because obviously sometimes the children they're getting a bit loud and they get muted, and of course they manage to override that. So I just wondered how it would work that. So.
I think, Sarah, the best way that we can manage that as teachers is a little bit like what Rebecca said before. So obviously teachers are using kind of behaviour policy on online lessons just the same way in which we will be doing it in school. So we're giving out merits for obviously appropriate engagement, and obviously on the flip side, obviously if we've kind of got any problems with behaviour, we're either directly speaking to the students after the lesson, or we are going back through the form teacher. So obviously, yeah, so kind of a little bit like what Kate said, we don't want them to be muted throughout the whole lesson because then we'd have no engagement. So it's just about our management really, and kind of upskilling them in kind of appropriateness really. Does that help?
Thank you. Thank you.
We've got a question in the chat here. I think this is one for you as well, Kate. When Ryan has accessed Teams, he occasionally clicks the join button too quickly and it says leaving, and then he can't get back on. Right.
That might be to do with the fact that the meeting either hasn't started, or when the person who's the member of staff has obviously gone to admit them, sometimes if they're pressing admit quite quickly over and over again, if they sometimes press the cross by mistake, then they'll struggle to let the person back in. So what I could probably do with doing is finding out off you separately which lessons it is, so we can try and make sure it doesn't happen. Is that all right, Liz? Brilliant, no problem. I'll send you an email separately, and obviously we can get to the bottom of that.
Okay, have we got any other questions? Don't worry if not, and obviously some of you might want to ask a question that maybe don't ask it in this forum. So you do have obviously, I know you, I think Kate put the email address for herself and Andy on there. So what we can do is maybe when when Kate shares this, if you've got any questions, if you just send them back to Kate on email, and then she can kind of give them to the relevant person if they're not directed to her. But I hope you found this morning useful. We have tried to kind of outline to you guys and the families ways in which we're moving forward at Elms Bank, and how we envisage our day one and our day two to run after a closure. I hope you kind of got a little bit more of that in your head now about how you understand that to run. We've tried to go through a little bit of the Teams functions for you with Kate, and then obviously Rebecca's finished off by thinking about how you can support your child to interact with that appropriately, as well as obviously supporting you with the increased amount of gaming or internet use that students are starting to use, because obviously they're spending more time at home. So thank you so much everybody for coming along to this session today. I hope it has been useful. Miss Langley-Sadler, I don't know if you want to say anything before we finish?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody, and obviously blended learning is new for everybody across the country, and obviously schools in the Northwest are being hit quite considerably because of our rate of infection out in the community, and we, it's really frustrating for staff, but we also know it's really frustrating for you as parents. So just to thank you for your support in these really difficult times. We hope that obviously this session's been useful, and I think, as I said at the beginning, we're just learning to navigate it ourselves as staff, as well as you are as parents. So please feel, no question is a stupid question, because staff have probably all asked those same questions, and we will, obviously work together. So if you have got anything that's that you need to discuss afterwards, and you'd prefer to talk about that in a different forum, then please feel free. We know, it's a difficult time, but it's also, we're all learning together as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so we'll finish there now. So we will bid you farewell, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
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 Bye.